Yeah. All right. So first off, man, I want to thank you for taking the time and coming on. Also want to thank and welcome the listeners to this episode of Inside the Neighborhood. Today's guest, my good friend, one of my best friends growing up, Kyle Beachy. Welcome, bro.
Hey, it's good. It's good to be here. It's good to connect with you, and just always a great time catching up. So
Yeah, most definitely. It's gonna be a good time. So before we get into kind of your upbringing and kind of where you've reached today, really just want to get your perspective and thoughts on a couple different things. With today being Martin Luther King Day, we all know his dedication, throughout his time in history and being a visionary and being someone who has, strive for equality. So really just wanted to first get your thoughts on Martin Luther King Day and, kind of what it means to you.
Yeah. So Martin Luther King Day it's a day when we can celebrate all things that he did and the path that he kind of set forward for change. But to me, in being a journalist, being in the news business, I see lots of inequities every day. So it's a continuing battle. And to me, it just means, hey, this is a day to remind people that what Dr. King did, his message is not done. Mm-hmm. And it's something that we have to really put at the forefront of our mind every single day because, he was fighting for equality. He was fighting for opportunities that people of color didn't have in the 1960s. And some of those same opportunities are still a struggle today. And it's just something that we need to continue fighting for. So that's kind of what it means to me. It's just a reminder that, hey, we got to keep going. We got to keep moving this forward.
Yeah, most definitely. I feel like we all have our own individual role within that, and, obviously you being a journalist and being in the news, I'm sure your role will continue to get greater and greater within that. But just, from the outside looking in and just following you on social media, just the small things like reposting pictures and reposting kind of your thoughts and your perspective on different situations where you do see inequalities, just being someone as somewhat of a spokesperson and stepping up, I'll tell you firsthand, that means a lot, because that's not always the case. Some people kind of shy away from that support and sharing their perspective and them cosigns. So, that definitely means a lot and goes a long way, just those small little things. So thank you for that.
Hey, it's literally the least that I can do. And I feel like, I have been given a lot of privileges and a lot of opportunities that I don't see other people getting. So all I can do is be an ally and be a voice and try to make sure that doesn't continue. So
yeah, no doubt. One more thing, I woke up today and I seen that Maya Moore, she announced her retirement officially on Good Morning America. So I'm sure you're familiar with her story. I'm not sure if everyone else is. I know a little bit about it. She, at the prime of her career, she chose to retire and chose to do some advocacy work for who now has became her husband, so which in my perspective is an amazing story. I see some people don't quite understand it and put different judgments on her and her career and her decision. But maybe you can share your thoughts on that.
I'm not super familiar with Maya Moore's story in whole, but I do think that, just the influence that she's had in her basketball career and being able to use that as a stepping stone, I admire that. Anybody who's able to go and use the talents that God has given them and to put a message out there for people who may not understand or may not see that message from somebody in that arena, I think it's awesome. So kudos to her. And a lot of times people can be very judgmental, especially toward athletes. When athletes take a stand or they take, they choose something that may be different than what people would imagine. And I think it takes guts to do that. So I'm happy for her. Good for her.
For sure. Me too. All right, let's pivot and get to know Kyle Beachy a little bit. So, like I mentioned before, we grew up. I think we first met each other like probably kindergarten. So ever since then, we've been good friends and always stay connected throughout the years. Some of my first thoughts when I think of you are the days when we used to just be on your guys' property at your house, jumping in between the pole barns, jumping from the haystacks and, just messing around, running around, how was it growing up on a dairy farm? Maybe not too many people get that experience, but that had to be, a big part of your development, and your discipline and just what, everything that poured into you as a child.
Yeah, it's something that I definitely carry with me today. A lot of people I meet, when I tell them I grew up on a dairy farm, they're just shocked, they're surprised, and it's just one of those things that you mentioned discipline. Watching my dad get up to go milk cows at 4 a.m. every day, and then watching him work all day, and then he's doing it again in the afternoon, and it does show you a little bit about discipline and just making sure that you have your priorities straight and working hard. And he wasn't given that opportunity. He worked hard every single day, and that was kind of instilled in me. But also, like, growing up on a farm, especially having 6 brothers and sisters, it was awesome because we had lots of land, we had lots of room. We were always outside playing ball. We were always playing baseball or basketball or football or whatever it was. So it was, I was very lucky to have that upbringing and to have that kind of, down home farmer mentality. And that's stayed with me throughout. And I look on people that I work with and people I'm surrounded by, and not everybody gets that opportunity. And it's something that I cherish and that I'm proud of.
Yeah, for sure. And one time, man, shout out to Lester, man. I seen today he's getting a knee replacement, so that might be due to them early 4 a.m. mornings, milking them cows. Yeah. So hopefully the procedure went well, and hopefully he's on his way to recovery.
Yeah, this is his second knee replacement, so he's gonna have two. He's gonna have 2 good knees. So
yeah, that's good. That's good. So we played a lot of sports growing up, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, track and field, so where does your mind take you when you think back on, just how immersed we were in the sports, like how competitive we were, how, our parents, provided us so many opportunities to play throughout the year, no matter what sport it was. So what's your perspective on that, because that sports, that was a big part of both of our developments, so I think of just the playground days, just being, playing on them short rims, how that played into my development, and then like we'd have week by week or 2 weeks, we'd be like 1 week would be football, next week we'd be playing soccer, so tell me about, what you think of thinking back then.
Well, I actually kind of have a new perspective on playing sports growing up, and I'll tell a little story as to why. I was talking to my dad during Thanksgiving, and part of, and I never knew this, part of the reason that he was so forward and so like encouraging for all of us in my family to play sports and to be active, and he would do anything to be able to be at our games and to coach our teams. And part of the reason
that was all of our parents.
Yeah. And you don't, when you're a kid, you don't really think about like sacrifices that your parents may make just to be able to make sure that you can play what you want to play. And I never knew this, but my dad told me when he was growing up on the dairy farm. And when he turned 16, he's working on the farm, and he said he was too proud of his work on the farm to ask his dad, hey, I want to play basketball, or hey, I want to play baseball for the high school team. And he never got that chance. Wow. He never got that chance to play in high school, and he was a good athlete, but that puts a different perspective on it for me, because my dad, he passed up job opportunities. He made lots of sacrifices just to make sure that we could play. But as far as like, out on the playground playing different sports, it was, it was awesome. And I look back on those memories and it's just, we had so much fun.
Yeah, yeah.
I also think that's where I gained this competitiveness, and I always had it.
Yeah,
I didn't always express it. I didn't always express it in the right ways, but just playing with you and Zach and Brad and all those times we were out there playing together, just really, it really has more of an impact on your future and the way that you see the world than you realize as a kid. But
most definitely. My mom and I were talking a little bit last night, and we were talking about you, just how, when things didn't go Kyle's way, boy, he was pretty upset. Like looking back onto that, how do you process that now as an adult, and was there any type of transition that you noticed throughout your, moving on into high school and then into college, was there a point that you can reflect back on and like where you had to really like understand that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of one point in particular. I'll tell a quick story in a second, but honestly, looking back on a lot of times when I was a kid, I get embarrassed. Like I'm embarrassed.
We were talking. We were like, because you were different. I don't think Brandon was the same way. I don't think Kirk was the same way. It was kind of like when Kyle got mad, you kind of just had to let him cool down. And it's like, I don't even know if your parents, it was like your parents kind of just had to like, let's just let him calm down. Like they didn't even really probably know what to do, Am I wrong?
No, you're exactly right. Like I just got so emotional in the moment. And when things went wrong or when things didn't play out how I wanted them to play out, I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle myself. And I got angry. I got upset, and that's something that
we're kids, so it's not nothing to really hold against you or hold against anyone else. It's just you were just so competitive and wanted to win, wanted to perform.
And I'm really thankful for that part of me, because I've definitely had to grow into it. There are times that I look back, especially playing with my brothers and my brother Kirk in particular. There are times when I look back on us playing together and I was really hard on it because I'm a person that, I want perfection. I want the best out of everybody, and I expect that out of myself, and I expect that out of everyone else. And I, had to learn that nobody's perfect, and you can't expect that out of other people. You gotta be able to make mistakes and learn from your mistakes and grow. And that's something that over time I had to learn. And, I'll tell a quick story. I played baseball in college, and, I carried this competitive spirit with me all through college. I still carry it with me today, and it helps me in my job. But I'll never forget this because we were playing in our conference tournament, and it was win or go home, and we had to win 2 out of 3 in this series, and we won the first game. And in the second game, I don't even remember exactly what happened, but we were winning, and we started to have a bad inning or something, and one of our guys made a mistake. I don't even remember what it was. Made an error and missed a cutoff man or something. In the grand scheme of things, not that important.
Yeah.
And I said something to him, and everybody heard it.
Mm-hmm.
My coach said, "Hey, you're done," and he sat me the next game, and that was the last game of my career. And I sat on the bench and I watched, and I'll never forget that because I could have prevented that. If I just learned that lesson that people make mistakes, move on to the next play.
Yeah.
And that was hard. That was hard for me to deal with. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. Let's go back a little bit. I want to get into your college baseball experience, but you were part of a state championship team. So we obviously grew up playing together, and in 8th grade, I had to make that decision whether I was going to go into Kokomo or stay at Northwestern, which a decision that I would never, I've never thought twice about. It played out perfect for me, but I remember 2007, I was so obviously I wasn't a part of that team, but just our history, I was so proud and so happy, that you guys won. So how was that experience of, playing ball through high school and then ultimately finishing with the state championship?
Man, don't sell yourself short, because you were a big part of those teams. I mean, you played with Josh, you played with me, you played with Cameron, Mark, you played with all those guys. And if we weren't playing with you growing up, then we weren't going to push ourselves to be better, because you're out there cooking everybody, and we got to do what we got to do to compete. But it was awesome. It was an incredible team to be a part of. And just being out there with those guys that we grew up with and those guys that we played with forever, and being able to go to the state finals, and it wasn't looking great that whole game. It wasn't looking good, but we found a way to come back and pull it out, and that's something that I'm still proud of, and I'll always be proud of it. But it's not just that one team in 2007. It's not just one year of being good. That's a whole lifetime of growing up together, building chemistry, and just being behind your teammates. So
no, that's great. That was special. So you spoke on playing college baseball. I didn't know that you were the head coach at Northwestern for a year.
I was for a year. Yeah.
How did that come about, and how was that experience?
So going back to my senior year of high school, I was torn. I wanted to play football or I wanted to play baseball. I had an opportunity to go play football at Butler, and after football season, I got into playing basketball, and then baseball season, and I was like, you know what, football is a lot harder. I'm just going to go play baseball. My brother was at Indiana Wesleyan at the time, my older brother, so I went there to play baseball, and just being able to play with him in college was something that I'll always remember. He went on to play in the major leagues for the Braves and the Dodgers, and just being able to say that I've faced him one time in my life and I drew a walk. So I'm
talking about Brandon.
Yeah, just being able to say that feels pretty good.
So I remember real quick. I remember I believe when we were 9 years old, like first entering major league. One thing I realized, I used to be so scared at the plate, and I remember it was always different when Brandon was pitching because he was so accurate, so he was such an accurate pitcher. So I felt so safe at the plate. So that was the most comfortable I ever felt at the plate through my baseball career when batting against Brandon, so that's that shows like how he made it to the major leagues, because at an early age, 12 years old, he was already accurate and already like polished as a pitcher.
It's crazy to think about, because you're right. I was super scared when I was playing too, because you got these guys that are throwing at the time seemed pretty hard. But
I remember like Ryan Kaiser, he was throwing sidearm.
He had that low delivery, man. I think I probably peed my pants a couple times facing him.
I remember I was at bat when he was pitching, and your hand is a part of the bat. That's what it's considered. So I remember he hit me in my hand, and I had to stay, like I had to follow through and continue my at bat. And I remember I was just after he hit me, so I got tears coming down my eyes. Like I wasn't even trying to swing. So I'm like, man, just get this over with. Him, Dustin Cronkite. I remember he was a lefty. That was some fun times. That was some fun times.
It was. It was a great time. And a lot of those guys, we went to the state championship my sophomore year in baseball in high school, and it was, Dustin was he was our best pitcher. Brandon was out there. Like we had a good group of dudes. So just growing up playing all those sports with those guys, it's stuff that shapes your character, and I remember it fondly. So
most definitely. So following college, we'll kind of speak real quick just on how you got the head coaching position at Northwestern. How was that? Because you had to be like one of the youngest head coaches probably in Howard County history.
So when I was in college, I studied education, and my goal was to be a teacher for a few years, coach baseball, and get into administration at the school level. So my first year out of college, I was a JV coach at Northwestern High School. I was the JV coach, and I coached with my brother Kirk, and that was one of the best seasons. It was just a lot of fun to be with Kirk and to be with these kids who were freshmen and sophomores in high school. And I still stay in contact with a lot of those kids because it was just a very developmental year. But after that, I went and I coached JV at another school for a year, and I was coaching these summer teams, 16-year-olds traveling all across the Midwest playing baseball. And then the job opened up, the head coaching job opened up, and I called the athletic director and I said, hey, I'm only 24, but I'm interested. I want to coach. And I went and interviewed, and it was done. So, and the thing about it that made it awesome for me was the freshmen and sophomores that I coached in JV 2 years before were now, juniors and seniors. And the program was, it wasn't doing real well. They hadn't won a sectional title since I played. And that was 7 years prior. So we had a good group of kids. And I think the big thing that I brought as a coach was stuff that I learned in college. People make mistakes. You gotta focus on making the next play. You're gonna make an error. You're gonna swing and miss. You gotta focus on making sure that you're ready for the next play. And just giving them that attitude. Were we the most talented team? No. We were the most polished team? No. But we went out and we won a sectional title. We beat some really good teams. We beat Kokomo, I think, for the first time in a long time, and that was fun. But yeah, we had a good season, and just coaching those guys is something that I'll always cherish.
Nice. So you mentioned that your plan was to teach for a few years and then go into, administration role. Did you end up doing that? And then I'm curious of, because I think back of when we were young, obviously you were very intelligent at an early age. You were always the person that we cheated from in school, so I always knew that you would grow up and do amazing things. But to be honest, you never think somebody's going to grow up and go and become a news anchor, which now doing research and thinking about it, like there's so much that goes into being a news anchor to where, I feel like maybe you didn't even have the clarity of knowing that you wanted to do that, but I feel like that's something that you have to kind of be called to do, So how was that? Like, when did you realize that that's what you wanted to do? And now that you're within it, it's like how, like this, you feel like this is what you were meant to do?
100%. And it's been a journey to get here for sure. Cause I was teaching, I was coaching baseball, and, there was a year after I coached that high school team when I was going through a lot of life changes. And one of my best friends was in grad school at Ohio State. And he said, hey, come over here. I think this program would be really good for you. It's a leadership program. You can get your master's degree, you can study, and you can kind of, figure out what the next step is in life. And I needed that at that point. So I came to Ohio State. I studied leadership and communications for 2 years. Teaching, I always enjoyed teaching, but I didn't feel called to do it. I didn't feel like I was the best teacher. I felt like I always could have been better. So I wanted to explore something else. So while I was at Ohio State, I taught communications, taught a speech class, which I never took a speech class in college, and it was something a little bit new for me. And then it pushed me to get up in front of everybody and perform. And I say perform. That's kind of what teaching is, because you're given a lecture, you're performing every day. And I met some people through that experience, and I kind of decided, you know what, I've never really reached my full potential, and I still haven't reached my full potential, but I'd never really thought about getting into news and being a news anchor until that time. And I was like, you know what, it's really something that I enjoy. I enjoy being on camera. I enjoy being in front of people. but I think the responsibility of it, you're really looked up to, and you have a lot of pressure on you to not just perform, but to be right, and to ask questions, and to be a person that can be trusted.
Mhm.
So I started after I got my master's degree, I came back to Ohio State as associate faculty, teaching that communications class for one more year. And during that time, I basically just took it upon myself to learn how to be a journalist, to learn how to be a news anchor. And I got a camera. I went out and I would shoot my own stuff. I would do stand-ups in front of the camera, and I put together a reel, and I started sending it off to, TV stations all over the country.
Wow.
And I got a call back from two. So I went to interview in Peoria, Illinois. And the interview went really well up until the audition part, when you get in front of the camera and you're reading it on the teleprompter and you're doing all that. And I bombed it. I didn't get the job. So I thought, maybe this is a turning point. Maybe this is a time when, I should pack it in and find something else to do. I can go back to teaching or whatever. But I kept at it, and I got a call from that same station 3 months later, and they said, "Hey, we don't have an anchor job, but we got a job as a reporter. Is that something you'd be interested in?" And I didn't even think about it. I up and moved 2 weeks later to Peoria, and it was the best thing I could have done, because it gave me the opportunity to learn from people who had been in the business a while, but it also gave me the opportunity to grow myself. I went there as a reporter, and when I tell you I didn't know anything about being a reporter, I mean I didn't know anything, and I just had to learn on the fly. And luckily I'm a fast learner, and I can pick things up, and I'm not afraid to ask questions. But I went in there as a reporter. A year later, I got promoted to weekend anchor. A year after that, I got promoted to evening anchor, and I can't be thankful enough for that opportunity to do that. Did I ever think that I was gonna be an evening anchor on the news? No, not really. But when I decided I wanted to do it, I went for it, and it exactly. And now I am back in Columbus, Ohio. I'm anchoring the news on Saturdays and Sundays. I'm a reporter during the week, and I'm doing what I love to do, and I'm continuing to learn more, and I'm doing it in a place that I want to be. And it's, look at just thinking back on this whole process. I'm proud of myself, but it's been crazy, man. It's been nuts. So
yeah, just the ability to get up and pack up everything and move into a new beginning, and kind of bet on yourself, that mindset in itself, is that something that you feel like has always been in you, or was that a tough decision?
I feel like it's always been in me, just to bet on myself. I get scared though, people get scared, and it's just a matter of being able to push yourself past that point of anxiety and worry and scared about the future.
Comfortable with the unknown.
Exactly. And I feel like everybody who accomplishes great things reaches that point multiple times in their life, where you don't know how it's going to work out, but you can't find out if you don't try.
Exactly. So I want to get some more insight into being a journalist and a news anchor. So if you can briefly just explain, like, what does a day look like for you as a news anchor?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm coming off a full weekend of anchoring. So basically, there's a couple different shifts for anchors. Typically, you're either on a morning shift or you're on an evening shift. The morning anchors, they'll get up at 1 a.m. They'll be into the station by 2:30, 3 o'clock. Thankfully, I don't have to do that because I'm not a morning person. But so I get up 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock every morning, trying to get into a routine where I'm going to the gym. I'm getting anything done that I need to get done. And then I'm going into work about 2 o'clock, 2:30. So when I get to work, the big thing is, as an anchor, you're kind of in a leadership role. You're not a manager per se, but you've got a lot of people who are looking up to you and looking to you for advice, who are looking to you to be able to make quick decisions. So every day is different. So it's kind of hard to give you an idea of, what a typical day looks like, just because you never know. There's breaking news that's happening all the time. I got to be able to balance making phone calls to try to find out information, making contacts with important people in the community, with elected officials, with police, with sheriff's office, with school boards. And that's a big part of the job, is just being able to make relationships and build trust in the community, not just with your viewers, but also with the people who you rely on for information. Because it honestly comes down to, if somebody doesn't like you and you don't get along, they're not going to give you what you need. And it may sound super simple and super easy, but it's actually, it's a very important part of it. But we usually have, so I'll get into work. I'll do a couple hours of, combing through emails, trying to find information, trying to find stories. I've got a producer who produces the show. We've got editors. We've got a reporter, photographer. So they're working on their own stuff, and I'm kind of like looking at each little bit of it, trying to make sure that we're coming up with a good game plan for that 6 o'clock show. And then 6 o'clock showtime, I'm going through my scripts. I'm rehearsing for probably a half hour before the show. And a lot of times, we'll get breaking news. Breaking news doesn't happen at a good time. It always happens in that last 30 minutes right before the show. So it's like, man, we gotta figure out what's going on here. But we make it happen. So then 6 to 6:30, it's showtime. Then we do another show at 7 to 7:30, showtime again. And the biggest part of this for me is just being able to talk to the camera and relate to the viewer. It's real easy to just read what you're saying. It's harder to build that relationship and to make somebody who's watching you believe in what you're saying and trust what you're saying. So after that, I'll have some dinner. If I didn't bring something, I'll go get some food somewhere. I'll come back to the office and then get ready for the 11 o'clock show. And that's a big time show. Cause this is a competitive business. And that's where being an athlete and playing sports growing up really pushes me, because I'm competing against 3 other stations in the market, and we're all competing for ratings. And every week there's a number 1, there's a number 2, there's a number 3, and there's a number 4. And if I'm down there at that 3-4 area, I'm not happy with it. I'm thinking, what can we do better to get more people watching us? What can we do better? So that part of it I really enjoy, because it's it's that competitive spirit in me. I don't get as upset.
It brings that fire out of you.
Yeah, it does. And I
I feel like that's something that us as athletes, once we transition on into another career, we lose that. We don't have that, so the toughest part of transitioning into another career following sports is just not having that competitive nature to tap into, and that fire.
Yeah, exactly. And you're exactly right. And I think part of that is, it depends on what you're going into.
True.
But one thing I've learned, especially working in this business, is that we are so lucky to have the opportunities we've had in athletics, competing, to be able to take that with us in the future. Because I work with a lot of different people. I work with people from all different walks of life. And you can really tell when you're working with somebody who is an athlete, because they just they have a desire and a work ethic and a want to do more that a lot of other people have to learn, but it comes second nature.
I feel like unless you've experienced that firsthand, you never will really understand it, and I feel like that might be the reason why, being an athlete and seeing so many, like we talked about before, so many people putting judgments on athletes in different ways and putting different narratives on their stories and their decisions and just how they move. I feel like that might be, why it has been sometimes tough to receive that and internalize it the right way, because it's like, man, there's so many benefits from being an athlete that, being a non-athlete, you just wouldn't understand.
Exactly. Yeah. And you bring up a good point. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but athletes kind of have a spotlight on them, and every move that's made, every decision that's made is kind of judged from one way or another. And I'm going to ask you a question, because I want to know how you kind of deal with it. But with that spotlight on, and people are second guessing every decision you make, and there's always going to be somebody that disagrees with what you do. How do you deal with that? How do you kind of block out the noise? Or is it something where you're not blocking out the noise, you're kind of taking it in and being introspective about it?
For me, it's like, I understand what I've been called and what I've been destined to do, so I separate myself from the athletic part, and look at my efforts in the community, in business and doing this and that, and it has came with a lot of different, like we said, judgments and, people trying to box you in and people with not the best intentions, so for me, it's like, it's always been relatively easy to, like see it, okay, like this is what's happening, understand it. As the time has went on, I've understood it more and more for what it is and where it really stems from, but it's been pretty, for the most part, it's been easy for me to just keep going, and not really get held up and caught up. I feel like when you have such a big vision and such a big mission, unless you're on that same type of journey, you're really just not gonna fully understand it, so I've understood where I come from, being a small town, so I know that what I'm doing and what I've done, it's never been done before. So I can't expect people to relate to it. I can't expect people to support it as needed in some instances, so for me, it's just now being in a position to even speak on that, and open up their eyes to that, and maybe the next person, athlete that's coming up in our hometown who understands himself more than an athlete, maybe they'll receive them in a better way, really, because I've gotten a lot of support, a lot of love, but being in the kind of driver's seat, it like to really, it could have been more, we could have gotten a lot more done. We could have done a lot more good work, but I kind of at this point don't really put expectations on it, but now it's just, let me just keep going. And, you just gotta kind of understand it from a distance in some cases.
Yeah. And honestly, that's something I always, thinking back to when we were kids, that's always something I admired about you, is that you were always so calm and cool out there when we're on the court. And I'm just watching you, do what you do and being so calm and cool about it. And then I was like the exact opposite of that. So I've definitely always admired that part of you.
I appreciate it. You kind of shared quite a few things I wanted to go in a little bit more depth with. So as far as like, you mentioned like getting up and lifting some weights or working out. So as a journalist and news anchor, what are some things that you do, whether it's, outside of the office or in the office? Like, what are some things you do to ground yourself and, pour into yourself and really take care of yourself?
Man, this is going to sound, it's going to show my age. We're getting up there in years, but I love to go for a walk so that I can think and I can kind of relax, but get my body moving. And those moments are special to me because there's lots of noise out there, and especially being in news. And I apologize if I get a little emotional about it, but there's a lot of bad stuff that happens. There's a lot of terrible things that go on, and I have to see those every day. But just being able to take time for myself and to think and be quiet.
Yeah.
I think silence is really something that especially in today's day and age when it's, you've got your phone on you at all times. You've got all these distractions. Just being quiet and being silent and being able to think and process, that is really important for me.
Yeah.
Just to be able to not only gather my thoughts, but just to kind of take everything that's coming in around me and be able to think about it and process it emotionally, because it can be really difficult at times. But that's something that I do that I don't think I'll ever stop.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. So another thing, just being in different industries, you'll deal with, especially being in a competitive field like yourself, like you said, kind of fighting for those different spots. One thing I've learned is no matter really what field or industry that you're in, there are going to be people who don't have your best interests at hand, who don't have the greatest intentions. So being a journalist and news anchor, what are those experiences being a news anchor that you might face, to where you realize okay, they might not have my best interests, or they might have bad intentions. What are some things that you can face within your role?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up, because in this business we're bound to contracts. It's not the same as an athletic contract, but it's kind of similar. Whereas, most people, they go off to work, they come home, they don't have to worry about being under contract. If they want to leave their job, they can leave their job, they can go find something else. In this business, it's, I signed a 3-year contract when I came to Columbus. I signed a 3-year contract 3 different times when I was in Illinois. And I just learned that, people that you work with very closely, people that are maybe in a management position, I've learned that you can only trust yourself. You can only bet on yourself. You can only trust yourself to make your path, because everybody else is looking out for them too. And sometimes the best thing for them, or what they think might be the best thing for them, isn't going to be the best thing for you. And I learned that pretty quick. I was only in Peoria for 1.5 years, and I wanted a full-time anchor job. And I was looking on the outside, and I accepted a job in Texas, and it was an awesome opportunity at the time. I'd only been in the business for 1.5 years, and I was going to be a full-time anchor, making twice as much money. And one of my direct bosses, since I was under contract, he basically said, this isn't going to happen. We're not going to let you do this. And that opportunity got squashed. That would have been a huge opportunity for my career. But, I'm also a person that believes that things work out for people who keep working, and it worked out in my favor. But I learned a lot through that experience, that not everybody has your best interest in mind, and you just got to fight. You got to fight for yourself, and you got to, I don't know if you ever watched Robin Big on MTV, but Rob Dyrdek says this. He says the phrase "make your own luck," and it's a lot of times it makes a lot of sense, because you gotta have your own back, because you can't rely on everybody else.
For sure. So, what role does a news anchor play in the editing and producing of your segments?
So it honestly just depends. Like when I was in Peoria's market number, TV markets are all ranked from 1 to I think 215 or something like that, based off of how big your audience is. Peoria is number 123, something like that. So it's a pretty small market. I had to produce my own show at 10 o'clock. Me and my co-anchor would produce our own show. We would do a lot of the video editing if we had to. Now, being in Columbus, which is a top 35 market in the country, I don't do any of that. I have more time to focus on being a news anchor and not necessarily doing all these different jobs and worrying about different stuff. So it really just depends on where you're at and what kind of support you have from your boss. And being where I am now, I feel an incredible amount of support. just to be the best news anchor that I can be and not have to worry about all those other things. So it's definitely something I'm glad that I had the experience doing, because I know how the show works inside and out. So if I need to help somewhere, I can. Now I don't have to, and that's a good feeling.
You've earned that. You've earned that. So what's the difference between co-anchor and anchor? And have you always been a co-anchor? And what's the the lines between that?
Well, it really just depends on the show. Like right now, I'm anchoring shows on Saturdays and Sundays, so I don't have a co-anchor. It's a one-man show. Now we do have a meteorologist, we have a sports anchor, so it's kind of a collaborative effort. But when you think about it, the anchor is the person that is really holding down the show. You think of a ship that's tossing the anchor over, that's holding it in place. That's kind of my job, is to facilitate everything else that's going on. When you have a co-anchor, there's two of us sitting at the desk, and it really brings a whole new dynamic to the show, because you're interacting with that person in and out from every story, but you're also kind of anchoring everything else. So it makes it fun, but it can be a challenge.
Yeah, no doubt. So I want to go back a little bit. You spoke a little bit about not in college, not taking a speech class, never really envisioning yourself being in this type of role. Kind of similar to myself. I remember being in high school, having to take speech class, and I'd have a speech on Friday, and I'd have anxiety the whole week. And I've never really experienced like anxiety, but like thinking back, it's like, man, that was anxiety, just being like, I was like petrified of being in front of the class talking, so I remember like just dwelling in them thoughts, so that's going to transition me into another question. But how was that process for you? Did you feel similar, or, how was that for you?
Oh, definitely felt similar. I think being a teacher kind of helped get my feet in the door.
I think for me, like having to do so many interviews over the year, that's kind of what allowed me to become more and more comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. And you can always tell, and me being on the other side of the microphone, I can always, I love it when whoever I'm talking to is comfortable in front of the camera. But it's not something that everybody's born with. A lot of people have to get outside their comfort zone, and honestly, that's all it was for me, is pushing through that comfort zone and kind of doing something outside of my norm, and practice. The more you do it, the better you. So I think
that's similar. It's similar to me. I feel like just over the years having to, going to different practices of different kids and high school teams, and just finding myself talking to them, just sharing my experience to them, and even just like meeting people, my wife and I, and just being able to talk and share our journey and our experience. And, I feel like that's allowed me to become more and more comfortable, to where now it's like I have visions of, becoming a speaker, and speaking in front of thousands of people, so that's like, I always think like, man, I never would have imagined, I remember a speech class just being scared, being terrified to give a 1 minute speech, and now I'm interviewing people myself, It's
awesome.
It is. So being a news anchor and having to, deal with scripts and develop scripts and read from a teleprompter, how is that? Because do you have to read from a teleprompter, or as you become more and more comfortable and more experienced, do you kind of have the leeway and have the comfortable? Are you comfortable to like just speak on your own? How is that?
Well, you kind of said it. I don't have enough experience right now. I don't,
because I'm curious, like how, like if I had to read from a teleprompter, I don't think I would be delivering the message in the right tone, and with the right cadence, so I'm just curious how that works.
So a big part of it, and honestly, this is still the biggest challenge for me, is to be able to kind of read and project as if I'm just talking. It's really hard, and the only way to get better at it is to just keep practicing, keep practicing. And the more practice I get, like early on, I wouldn't say anything unless it was on the prompter, unless I was reading it, because I was I was too scared or anxious or whatever it was to kind of go off script and stumble and not be able to find myself. But after a while, you realize that everybody stumbles over words. And if you're not stumbling over words every once in a while, it's not going to sound like you're talking normal. It's going to come off like a robot. So I feel a lot more comfortable now, but it only comes through practice and getting reps, just getting more reps. But most of everything I say is coming straight from the prompter. And another thing that people just don't typically realize about a news anchor is that, I'm not writing most of the stuff that's in the show. We've got producers, we've got reporters, they're writing a lot of stuff. And it's my job to go through all that and through all those scripts and kind of, if I read something and it just doesn't sound right to me, it's not how I would say it, I'll just change it and make it sound more like me. And that's a big part of, getting experience.
You feel like that has similar to like reading books, and developing your vocabulary. Do you feel like reading those scripts from other people's perspective, do you feel like that's helped you along those lines at all?
Yeah, definitely. Because, a lot of times I'll be reading a script for a story that the reporter has been working on all day. And if I can kind of read it from their perspective, I will learn all the things that they're trying to get across. And sometimes, I'll be reading a script and I'll have a question. I'll be like, hey, what's, you're telling me about this, but what about this aspect? And I can go talk to the reporter, and then we can, that way, because I'm the one saying it, I need to come across like I'm the expert. So it's definitely good to have those multiple perspectives.
Yeah. Has there ever been a time when you paraphrased or changed some words and the reporter kind of they put all this work in all day and it's they kind of felt some type of way?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I felt that way too, because I've been on both sides. When I wrote a script and an anchor changed it to say something else, and I would prefer that there's a conversation that's had when scripts are changed like that, because you never know what the perspective is. And I've experienced that when, an anchor is tossing it to me out in the field, I'm doing a live shot, and then they say something that I wasn't ready for. And I didn't know that because they changed it and I wasn't ready for it. But at the same time, I've been on the other side when I changed the script. And I remember one time in particular, a young reporter that we were working with, I was anchoring. She came up to me and she said, hey, did you change the intro to this story? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, don't you think we should have talked about that first? And I thought, yeah, you're right. You're right. Because I've been on that other side. And you're right. There should be a conversation had there. So, there's always learning moments, no matter what side of it.
No, that's cool. That's cool. So being a journalist, being a news reporter, being a news anchor, is there any moments where your clutch gene kicks in or has to kick in? You have to tap into it?
100%. It happens at some point almost every single day, where something happens that you're not expecting or something happens that you're not ready for. Live breaking news happens and I don't have a script for it. So I kind of got to just go off of bullet points. I gotta be able to communicate the very little details that I know to an entire audience. That's one example. Or it could be, out in the field, just completely talking without a script. If something happens and we got to go on air, I don't have a choice. I gotta go for it. Other examples would be, it happened last weekend when we're right at the start of the show, and for some reason the very first story just doesn't show up in the teleprompter. So before I can toss it out to the reporter who's live, I have to be able to introduce this story. And a lot of it is preparation. I knew what the story was. I knew what we were talking about, so I can just talk. But those are moments when, you know, your heartbeat stops for a second. You're like, wait a minute, the teleprompter doesn't say what I'm supposed to say. So I just got to come up with it off the top of my head. And that happens more often than I would like, but definitely, I don't know if I'd say I've got the clutch gene, but I'm doing okay. I'm getting there.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, no doubt at all. So this kind of a two-part question. So you kind of mentioned before, you know, being a news anchor, just being able to balance your own personal emotions with what you experience, whether in the field or, you know, just doing research and different stories. So how is that balancing your emotions with the stories and then having to deliver and project, you know, and bridge that gap between different communities? How is that, you know, and have you ever felt the need within yourself to not share something or not speak on something that you were supposed to or that was in the script just because you didn't feel comfortable sharing it and maybe you didn't think that the people need to hear it?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's two parts to that, and the first one being the emotion. And when I first started doing this, I did my very best to separate the emotion from whatever story it was. But as I've learned over the years, I think it's an important thing for me to be able to tap into my emotion and to show it when necessary.
You're able to relate to the listener more, and you feel more personable.
Yeah, because people notice. I think back to a live shot that I did a couple months ago, and it was a really sad story. A mother and her son were killed, and it was very emotional. And if I'm not showing how emotional this situation is when I'm talking about it, then I'm not doing that family justice. I'm not giving the audience the true scope of what is happening here. And that's something I had to learn through experience, but I think it's really important to bring that emotion to the table when I'm telling a story, because these are people's lives. This is somebody's story. And if I'm not giving it the proper emotion, then I'm not doing it justice. And I feel like I'm failing that family when I'm not being able to tell their story correctly. So I think channeling emotion is a big part of it. Now, there have been times when something was in a script or something was written that I just didn't feel comfortable with, that I didn't feel like needed to be said. And in this business, you know, the media gets a lot of scrutiny because, you know, a lot of times people are looking at us and saying that whatever media company it is, they're looking at and they're saying, you know, this is sensationalization. They're sensationalizing a story, or they're trying to divide people, whether it's by race or sexual orientation or whatever it may be, whether it's politics, any of that. And a lot of times I will see a script and I'm thinking to myself, is this important for the story? Is it important for me to almost take this person and put them into a group? Is that important for the story? And if the answer is no, then I'm not going to say it, because I don't need to, you know, I don't need to be that person that's causing further division and making people think negatively or positively on a group of people or on an organization. But I do think there are times when it is important to make note of something that may be deemed as controversial in the political realm or with sexual orientation or anything like that. So I guess the long-winded answer is, yeah, there are times when something's in a script and I just don't think it's appropriate and I won't say it. And I've never encountered a situation where somebody who is over me, a manager or somebody, said, "Hey, why did you change this?" I've never encountered that, but I'm always prepared to, and I always have a reason why I wouldn't say something. So
yeah. No, that's good. That's good. So being in the media, and you know, from my experience, just traveling so much internationally, and you know, I feel like at the more so at the grassroots level, maybe like when you're working like more localized stations and in more localized positions, you know, I feel like you get more of the positive and feel good stories to where like I'm traveling around the world and I'm talking to all these different people, even most recently here in Australia, and just how they perceive America and the media and what's, you know, projected in the media, and then at a national level, just how divided that we are. You know, how what's your perspective on, you know, just the media in general, you know, for people who, you know, recognize that, and, you know, someone like myself who, you know, is trying to do my part now in media to share positivity and share people's stories. And, you know, I don't feel like I have to talk about the what I call the daily transitions, you know. It kind of seems like every day our communities and our society, especially in America, are talking about the same topic, a topic this day, you know, a topic this day, and more times than not, it's something negative, you know. So, what's your perspective being like fully within media, and from the looks of it, you're working your way up to even higher levels. So, what's your perspective on that?
I think it's really important to kind of look at everything as a whole, and to realize that, you know, a few bad apples can make the whole bunch go bad. And it's important for me to understand that from someone else's perspective too. Like when somebody says something negative about the media toward me, I have to understand that that's just their perspective from what they've seen. And you know, while it may not have been me particularly, they still have a valuable perspective. Now, I also think it's important for me to stand up for what I stand for. And sometimes that means getting into a little Twitter argument over something silly. But there's so much negativity out there, especially how surrounding the media. And I'm not saying that it's not well deserved, because a lot of times it is. And at certain levels, it just you know, it's all driving clicks. They're just driving clicks. They're just trying to get as many clicks as they can. And that's really hard for somebody who's trying to be authentic. And I think that's the most important thing in this whole thing, is that if you are authentic to yourself, people are going to notice that, and people are going to really latch onto that. And that's why I don't worry about, you know, things that people are saying negative about this or negative about that. And I just try to focus on being myself and being authentic to who I am. And that kind of ultimately, I think, will shine through. This whole phase that media is in, especially, you know, major national networks. I think this whole phase is going to pass at some point. I'm hopeful that it does. But I just try to be authentic to myself and to tell the truth, and to, you know, own up to my mistakes if I make a mistake, because that's not what everybody sees every day. And I think having integrity is something that I pride myself on. And I don't know if that answers the question, but it's hard. It's hard.
Sure. No, for sure. So one of my former teammates, Draymond Green, he's kind of coined and now trademarked the phrase "the new media." So do you have a perspective on, you know, old media, new media, where media is headed? You know, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh man, I don't know if I know enough about what Draymond has said about new media, so to speak, to have an opinion about it. I can definitely understand, like, from his perspective, that, you know, he sees things.
What I believe would be, you know, speaking specifically as an athlete and being athletes, you know, now there's so many of us who have developed our own platforms, you know, and do have influence. And, you know, personally, we're able to share our stories, you know, in ways that we never have, you know. So I feel like it's more so that, you know, I don't have full clarity of it because we haven't had a conversation about it, but I believe that's kind of the direction that he's going in and what he's thinking. And I've, you know, being a podcaster and watching podcasts and listening to interviews, you know, there are some great platforms by athletes who, you know, are bridging those gaps between people and different stories and different industries, you know. So I feel like it's, you know, I feel like it's just athletes sharing their stories, combining their stories with other people's stories like we're doing now, you know, and just not feeling like we need to divide people and pull people apart or talk about what everybody's talking about on Twitter right now, you know, just kind of have our own platform. And, you know, which it kind of may speak to what you mentioned as far as like you believe that we're going to transition out of this phase of being so divisive and everything being so polarizing. So maybe that is will add to some context, and maybe you can share a little more.
Yeah, definitely. I think I understand, you know, what you're saying and where you go with it, because, you know, when we're growing up, if I wanted to know something about my favorite team, we'll just take the Indianapolis Colts, for example. If I wanted to know something about the Colts and what was going on, the only way I'm learning about that is in the newspaper from the beat writer, or from, you know, what I see on the 1 hour sports show every week on TV. And those guys and women, they don't have the same perspective as the athletes themselves. And I think maybe that's where we're going with, you know, lots of different athletes have podcasts and have other ways of giving their perspective. And you know, I think about Kevin Durant and the way that how active he is on Twitter and how honest he is and how he's his authentic self. And I think that's awesome, because 20 years ago, you didn't see that from the athletes and people. I don't think that everybody, sports fans in particular, you know, you got the old heads who look back on the glory days. They're not used to the athletes being able to directly look at them and say, you know what, whatever you said, that ain't right.
It's like we've always had to speak within cliches and just give the safe answer and not really able to add our personality and character to the answers, you know. So yeah, it's great to see that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's awesome.
I think it's showing the youth that, you know, the most important thing is to be yourself. And there's been so many instances within interviews where it's like, yeah, you answer, you say what they want you to say, and then you get back to the locker room and you're kind of speaking in a whole different tone and in a whole different way. And even just being comfortable speaking with how you speak, you know, not having to speak proper, you know, or speak any type of way. So I feel like, you know, big picture is showing the youth, like, just be comfortable being you. You know, it might come with some pushback, you know, it might come with people judging you for how you speak or what words you say, but, you know, ultimately, you know, we should all feel comfortable being ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about that authenticity and just being confident in yourself. And I that's definitely something that is continuing to grow within our culture, and it's only going to lead to good things, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. So I want to finish in a little different way. You know, most of the times people finish with, you know, some quick questions, quick answer situations. But you being a journalist, being in the media, I want to turn the interview to you and see if you have any questions that you would like to ask me.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm so curious, just like growing up together and watching your journey. When did you talk a lot about having a vision and having a purpose and knowing what you want to do. When did you realize what that vision was? And how do you go about taking the steps to accomplish that every day?
So for me, my vision and how it's played out has been very, very organic. And I entered a space when I became a rookie on the court. I was fortunate enough that my father had a business degree and he was able to kind of guide me early on in my career, you know, to where I speak on having a vision, but to be honest, I've been so captivated in the moment and what can I do now? You know, what event can I plan? How can I bring people together in this way? How can I be here or raise some funds for families in this way? How can I raise money for stamps for people who are incarcerated? You know, so it's like I've always just been really in the moment. to where like 10 years later, now being 10 years later, I look back and I see the position that I'm in and the space that I'm in. I'm like, man, like I'm within the vision that I never even realized. I was so naive to really have a vision and have like bigger aspirations. So for me, the best thing that I've done is just to really stay in the moment and to really genuinely care about others, and just lean into that. I never would have imagined having my own podcast. It kind of came, like I said, organically to where like look back, I've reflected, I've planned and managed close to 50 events. I probably raised and generated 6 figures within different communities in different ways, and I've never made a dollar myself. It's never been about me. It's always been about others, so I feel like I've done it in my instance, in my case, I've done it the right way and kind of got it right. So where like, then I reflected and looked back and I'm like, okay, like I've done all this work, I've done a great job at networking. My network is amazing, very diverse, a lot of people who are very successful doing a lot of different things. So for me, it's like, I never would have imagined this, but it kind of like how it played out was like, okay, I've done the work, I have the network, I have the influence, and just really a big part of my journey has been, I believe, was like LeBron and how he approached his career early on, to where like I kind of was ahead of the curve when it comes to being involved in communities, when it comes to charity efforts, when it comes to giving back in general, so I've done over a decade worth of that now, to where now it's good to see like people stepping up and doing stuff in the communities and doing this and that, but it's also confirming to me to where like I've been doing it for 10 years now, so it doesn't come to a surprise to find myself in the space that I'm in now, able to, continue to evolve and grow. And, now I feel like there's nothing that I can't become. There's nothing that I can't do, it's only going to continue to get greater, so it's been very organic. It's been naive, I haven't really fully understood it throughout the time I've been doing it. But now that I've really reflected the last few years, I'm like you said about yourself, I'm very proud of where I'm at, what I've done. I'm grateful for the people that have been around me. I've had a lot of great people around me who have poured into me in their own ways and allowed me to continue to evolve and continue to connect people in different ways and provide different opportunities. So, this podcast came about for me just realizing like, okay, I've done the work, I got the network, I have the influence, now the only next step is to share my story, and now especially other people's stories, and kind of combine them. And like I have been doing the last few months with my podcast, and I've gotten such great feedback, and it's helped a lot of people. And I just continue to get messages behind the scenes and people thanking me and being inspired. So, like I said, I never would have imagined, but it's a great feeling, man, just knowing that I put in a lot of work, and now it's kind of, coming into the full circle moment. So that's kind of how it's played out for me.
That's, I just got to tell you how proud I am of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just looking from the outside, growing up together and just watching you grow. And I was actually just talking about it earlier today, the Big Ten tournament in 2012, when you just went on, and just being able to watch your career, and not just that, but like it takes guts to put yourself out there and to put yourself in a position where failure is not just a possibility, but it's likely, and to be able to continue pushing through that to make a difference. And
yeah, there's been a lot of situations and a lot of experiences where, things could have went the other way, where I could have fell back and kind of shied away from, putting myself in those positions of vulnerability, of planning these events and doing these different efforts and going to these different meetings with different leaders and different people all over the world. So, there's a lot that comes with it that, you know, is unfortunate, you know, that kind of speaks to, you know, kind of society in general, you know, and the systems that we are within, you know, but
Yeah.
pretty much like everything I've been involved with and, you know, had to go through and the challenges and the ups and downs, I'm thankful that it's always relatively been easy for me to just really move on kind of immediately. You know, it's kind of like a skill and a gift, you know. So, you know, I kind of just have leaned into that to where like, you know, now it's just, you know, just I'm kind of following as well. You know, I'm kind of watching my experience pan out as well, you know, and just kind of leaning in a little bit. So it's been very special, man. And you know, like I said, I don't take it for granted. And now I just kind of do all I can do to share it all with not only our peers, but you know, especially the up and coming generations. You know, so that's kind of my vision and why I, you know, my why. You know.
Now you said something about upcoming generations. I think it's really important for kids to have people to look up to.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the real quick, just the one piece of advice you would give a kid who's, you know, a 13-year-old kid? You can even look at yourself back when you were 13. What's the one piece of advice that you would give a kid for the future?
We kind of just spoke on it, and I would just say simply be yourself and be confident in your decisions, whether they go in your favor or not, and always stand on your morals and, you know, your good intentions. You know, there's a lot that comes your way that you'll deal with, but it will be just simply just be yourself, stand on your decisions, be a servant, you know, serve others, do all you can to serve others, because that's really how I found myself in the space I'm in today. I've just served my way here. You know, I haven't expected nothing in return. Like all the stuff I've done, I've put my money into, I've put my time into, you know, I've never really gotten paid for anything. You know, it's just like it comes from really truly caring about other people, you know, and I feel like that stems from my parents. You know, you know, we were solid, we had a solid home growing up, but you know, they always welcomed everybody in. You know, they always were the family that, you know, would do anything for any of you all, you know, just like a lot of our parents. But I'm aware that, you know, my parents, they stepped up for a lot of people in a lot of different ways, you know, and they didn't always have it going on. You know, they were going through their own things within themselves, within our family dynamic. So just what I took away from them, you know, just being a people's person, not judging people. You know, they had people that were friends that were business owners, but we grew up living in a trailer park, you know, so it's like I always was able to relate to all different walks of life. So, you know, I would say don't judge people, be yourself, and just do all you can to serve others.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on, man. We'll wrap it up, man. Again, man, thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for taking the time, and you know, just for everything you're doing. You know, I've done now that I've got more insight, you know, to your story and what you do, and I've kind of done my research as well. You know, your role and your position is very, very important. You know, and you bridge those gaps between, you know, different stories and what's going on in society and with, you know, the people who are, you know, just working and coming home from work and wanting to watch the news and see what's going on. So that's a very, like you said, it's a role that probably definitely comes with a lot of different pressures, you know, but I believe, you know, just through what I know from you, you're someone who's built for it, you know, so I look forward to, you know, seeing where your journey takes you. You know, I feel like you're not someone who's just gonna be complacent where you're at and just content where you're at. You know, you're someone that if you get involved with something, you're probably gonna work your way to the top, you know. So I look forward to what's to come for Kyle Beachy, the journalist, the news reporter, and the anchor.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on. it's been fun to just, reminisce on old times, but at the same time, I am so proud of everything you've accomplished, and I'm proud of everything I've accomplished, and I know that we both have so much more ahead of us. So, hey, you always got a fan in me, and I just really appreciate you give me the opportunity to kind of share my story a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. And you even I think you came to at least one of my G League games.
Yeah,
so there's even just something like that, it goes such a long way, probably longer. It means more than what you even know, because that whole year I was playing in Chicago, and I could probably count on both hands how many people came to a game, so that, that's not something I ever really put expectations on it, but, I reflect and I know I'm very aware, so that means a lot, because you could have made different excuses. You could have not came, but, to go, obviously you're a sports fan, but for you to come, that meant a lot, so thank you for that support, not only then, but just throughout my journey.
Hey, it's nothing. I was so excited just to be able to go watch you play. It was something I'll never forget. It was really cool.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, bro. Thanks again, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, appreciate it.
All right, bro.
See ya.